This is a picture of nothing. It's actually a picture that's kind of like Trocare because it fits all, other than the actual city itself, it fits all of the characteristics of Trocare. Trocare is a large city, mostly of white or tan stone, that sits at the base of a mountain in a mountain chain and is surrounded by a forest. And so I'm like, wow, this basically has all the characteristics of Trocare, while in and of itself looks absolutely nothing like Trocare. Trocare is not nearly so blocky, bulky, tall. Trocare is much more villagey and sitting flat on the ground. It's at the base of a mountain, but it's not crawling up the side of the mountain like this one looks to be. This very much looks like a dwarven city. However, none of that is germane to this video. This video is about names and the fact that I suck at coming up with them. There are basically two different methods, two main methods that I use when I come up with names. The first is stealing names, and there are two subclasses of stealing names. The first is when they actually give you a list of names. A lot of times in D&D, in the books, like when they come out with a new character race, in the write-up for that race, they're going to have a list of suggested names. Because when you play an elf or a dwarf, you want to have an elven or a dwarven sounding name because it helps keep you in character. You certainly don't want to play, Bob the Elf, because that just helps, it brings people out of the fantasy. So those lists of names are cool. And it's kind of technically stealing when you choose a name off that list. I'm putting it under the stealing section, even though it's obviously intended that you use them. That's how Stenval got his name. The list of names for the Finnar in Hellfrost included the name Stenval. I said Stenval is an awesome name, and so my character has to be named Stenval. And there you go. That's how it worked. The second way that I steal names is I find other names, names that I think are cool, or at least when I hear the name, I think it fits with what I was trying to make. And that is how we ended up with Trocare. I had created the idea for this City Runes dungeon. And I still have the initial pieces of paper where I wrote the idea out. It's like 3 pages long. And the entire time through the document, this place does not have a name. It is just called the City Runes. And the reason for that is I don't like naming things definitively unless I know for sure that that's what I want the name to be. And there's a caveat to that, which we'll get to later. Caveat. So I will have the idea. I will use a descriptive name for it. We saw it also in the Hoach when I talk about the Boom Town. I didn't name the town in that document, but I just called it the Boom Town because that's what it is. And I had to wait until I found a name that fit. I hate the name Land's Blessing, which is what I ended up naming the town, but it's stuck. It is now irreparably attached. Irreparably attached. That's not quite what I want, but it's like super glued to the idea. I can't think of the Boom Town without calling it Land's Blessing now. The Runes of Trocare. Okay, so we had the city runes, and I was trying to think up a name, and this was back when I played Magic a lot, and I believe I was specifically going through my Magic cards trying to find names for things. And I thought, okay, how about the Runes of Trocare for the name? This is a Magic card. I own 2 or 3 of these, and it's a terrible Magic card. You should never play with this. But it had the right name. I mean, I had the City Runes, and this is the Runes of Trocare. That's perfect. And the idea was the idea. I specifically decided this was a good name because the Runes of Trocare fit the City Runes name so well. But the picture also became very evocative. In the City Runes of Trocare, I always imagine that the buildings are mostly runed. So you end up with things like this, where you have, 2 walls of the building but no roof, and the other side of the building is completely crushed or collapsed. So that's how I imagine the town looks. So this card has I mean, it just stuck so strong that now I called even the entire campaign world Trocare. What else? Outside of Trocare, I knew that I wanted a dangerous region of forest or plant life, and so I just called it Thornscape. This is a little bit later on, but it's the same basic idea. I had There was actually another town, not the one outside the Hoach, and I was going to call that Thornscape, but I decided Thornscape sounds so much cooler as a an area of land as opposed to a particular town. So that's where we went with that idea. The other way that I make up names is by association. And by association, I mean I sit around with the idea in my head until something pops up that sort of sticks to it. And a lot of things that I've named have been named this way. A representative case would be the bandit leader from the Runes of Trocare. I worked in the cafeteria in high school, and we had snack carts. Basically, these big, I want to call it an iron cage. But yeah, just like a big metal cage that you would roll out. It was almost 6 feet tall. Yeah, it might have been 6 feet or even higher than that. Regardless, this big, huge cage, and inside of it was just all kinds of absolutely terrible for you snack food. Donuts and Hostess cupcakes and gum and potato chips and Doritos, and you also sold soda and pizza at these carts. And you would wheel them out over the campus so that not all the students would have to cram into a giant line in the cafeteria. I don't know if they still do that there, but I ran one of these carts, and I was in charge of my cart. And while I would sit there before lunch would start, because you'd get to take it out 10 or 15 minutes before lunch starts, so you could go out, set everything up, and get ready, I would sit down with a notebook and write more ideas. And one of the ideas I wrote about was the bandit leader in the Runes of Trocare. He and his bandits would prey on caravans that went by the runes. And I needed a name for him because I kept calling him just like at the City Runes of Trocare, where it was called the City Runes the entire time. I called this guy just the Bandit Leader the entire time. So I sat back one day and I brought a chair out with me because I'm not going to stand the whole time. And I just laid back and closed my eyes and imagined the scene of these bandits, sort of hanging out in between raids. And I saw the bandit leader walking through them, and suddenly the letter K popped into my head. So now I knew that the bandit leader's name had to start with a K. And I thought some more, and unfortunately this was a time when I was playing Forgotten Realms in 3rd edition, and one of the first K words that popped into my head was Kelemvor, who is the god of the dead in Forgotten Realms. And I'm like, I can't name him Kelemvor because, stealing names is fine, especially when everybody else doesn't know where they come from. But to steal a name like Kelemvor, especially with, when I was expecting my brother to be playing in my group, and my brother's a huge Forgotten Realms fan, that wouldn't work. So I shortened it to Kelem, Kelem, and that's where I got my Kelem name. All 3 of the Faces of Fear were named this way. Who else was named this way? I can't think of specific examples right now, but I do know that a lot of people are named that way because that's the general manner in which I make up names for things. I either steal it, or I sit back, or a name will come to me. Sometimes I specifically, like with Kelem, sit back and let them come to me. Now, the other way in which I suck at coming up with names is that once I actually do get a name, a lot of them have unintended consequences. For example, one of the names that I stole was for a samurai character I played in 3rd edition under the Oriental Adventures rules. I had an idea for a character, and I knew he was from the Kakita family, so his name was Kakita something. And while I was doing research about that family online, someone had made up a character called Kakita Tenpoin. And so I said, okay, my guy's name is Kakita Tenpoin. The name had stuck in my mind, and so it's like, even if I wanted to change it, I had to keep it. Now, playing the game one night, everybody at the table is like, that name is too hard, so, fix it. And I'm like, okay, well then just call me by my initials, KT. And rather than calling me KT, they'd all decided that my name was now Katie. And so Katie the Samurai was born. Another one that hasn't happened yet, but that I anticipate, is this bandit leader who probably won't appear as is in the sandbox game. His name is Kellum, but I'm imagining people are going to start calling him Killum or Kellogg or something else like that just to irk me when we play. I somehow come up with names that are very easily twisted into irkable offenses. But that's my name game. A lot of names in Trocare are stolen, and the rest of them are stuff that I made up, but I suck at either one of them. Bye bye.